Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. Today's main story is divided into two posts. The first one is the prequel, which has an update, and then we move on to the main post that also has an update. So let's get started with that prequel. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user Merit Exploration. Am I the a-hole for stopping sharing information after my wife told all her friends she had cancer before me? My wife is someone in class as my best friend, and we have been together for 20 years. We have done everything together, and normally we tell each other the first thing about any new news. She recently started to develop a few breast symptoms, which are concerning, and we went to the general practitioner who referred us to a cancer clinic. We were very scared, and I went with her for the whole thing, taking time off work. We were told they did see a small lump on a scan, but it was probably nothing and took a biopsy. We would be told in a few weeks what the results were and told not to worry. It's been 6 weeks and I thought we hadn't heard anything, which had been playing on my mind. I made a few passing comments and my wife had just shrugged it. Last week, I sat her down and explained we should raise it with the hospital and complain as it wasn't fair how long we were waiting. My wife uncharacteristically started arguing with me and ended up shouting that she already knew the results. She had been asked to come in and took one of her friends with her 3 weeks ago. They had told her she had localized cancer and they were planning chemo and surgery. It would mean we would need to speak and go through egg storage and fertility, and she was worried she would upset me, causing me to leave. I'm obviously devastated and scared about my wife. She's my best friend and I don't want to lose her. I don't care about anything else. I just want to be there for her, even if it means not having children. I'm just hurt and worried that she felt she couldn't tell me or involve me. It hurts to know she has been dealing with it on her own and I couldn't support her. I will not or ever leave her, no matter what, and I know she needs my support right now. However, I have found I have stopped talking about what is going on in my life or my stresses and just closing down any conversations about my day, etc. My wife has accused me of planning to leave or cheating and says I am being an oversensitive a-hole. So, am I the a-hole? On this one, I'll just keep it short. I don't think OP is the a-hole in this situation because I get the impression he's more concerned about his wife's health than anything that's going on in his life, so he might not have much to talk about other than her condition. And what do you guys think at this stage in the story? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's go check out those community comments to see what they had to say. Fancy Repair 2983 says, not the a-hole, but understand that the numbers say husbands often leave after the wife gets cancer. It is statistically a fact, unfortunately. Someone somewhere may have asked or suggested she bring a friend and not her husband to that appointment. I have heard this from numerous women with cancer, nurses, and doctors. It hurts, but try not to take it personal, even though it kinda is. Try some counseling together and separately. Cancer is no joke. Just try to stay positive and hope for the best on all fronts. None of this is going to be easy. I wish you all the luck, hope, love, and praise. MD Thomas says, this is above Reddit's pay grade. No a-holes here. And OP responds, I have booked in for therapy next week, but I just want to be the best person to support her and want to run it by the hive mind. Sorry, I just wanted to get it out of my head as I'm struggling a bit. And Affectionate Ad 6284 says, gentle, you're the a-hole. I've had 2 cancer scares. Trying to navigate the complex emotions of your own body betraying you is completely enveloping. Everything, every decision, every breath, every speck of food, everything becomes about a literal worst case scenario, even if it doesn't seem rational from the outside. I couldn't take on my husband's best friend, life partner's complex emotions too. I shared what I could when I could. I'm not sure it sucked for him, but you know what else sucks? Cancer. You didn't change, her whole world did. Give her hugs, grace, and all of the love you have. I wish the best possible outcome for you both. So the community was between not the a-hole and no a-holes here, and there were a few you're the a-holes. Also, there was a lot of link sharing to different studies saying that when women get cancer, men leave, or where men get cancer, women leave, or nobody leaves. So I guess at this point and on that topic, I think it depends on the person. Anyways, let's move on to the update to the prequel post to see what happened next. So, I took a long time and read all the comments. I do feel much more of an a-hole than a lot gave me credit for, and I have been quite selfish. My wife was scared of telling me, thinking I would react badly, and I did exactly that. Clearly, she knows much better than I do. We spoke about it the night after I posted, and I discussed what her fears were about the whole process. I spent a large time listening and tried my best not to talk about my fears or thoughts until I had fully understood how she felt. She had become worried that I was dependent on her, and with my past history of my sister dying of the same disease she now had, she was worried about how I would cope. We had a really nice conversation, and I apologized for becoming more distant. I explained that I did know about the stats of man leaving and how I never would be one of them. I explained I had arranged therapy and wanted to be far better than I was. I explained I would offer to be there for every session, but if she wanted to take a friend like she did before, she could do so. She suddenly stopped talking and started crying at this, which I couldn't understand. She started talking and explaining she didn't go with a friend, she went with another man, someone she had been seeing for 18 months. When he found out, he ran for the hills and she was heartbroken. She was worried she would lose me too. She apologized for hours. We've agreed to stay together and have booked into counseling together, and she will see someone else separately. I feel empty, but she can't do treatment alone. That argument can come another day. So that's why she was accusing OP of cheating and wanting to leave her, because her affair partner had already done that. It had nothing to do with all those studies that people brought up in the comments. But regardless of her cheating, OP is gonna stand by her. They're gonna go to counseling because he doesn't want her to be alone during the treatment. So now I ask you guys again, what would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Would you stay or would you leave? Do you think the diagnosis changes the fact that she's a cheater? Does she deserve anything different than any other cheater in the relationship situation? And this all takes us to OP's next post. It's from the subreddit Cheating Stories. Would you leave if you were in my shoes? My wife of 20 years has recently been diagnosed with breast cancer. There was a delay in her telling me she had the results by around 3 weeks, initially claiming she went with a friend and didn't know how to tell me. It transpires she has had an affair for 18 months and took her boyfriend to the appointment. He and her have been discussing things and he has ditched her at some point over the last week as he couldn't handle it. She has told me and apologized. After posting on another sub, I'm aware of how many men leave after a cancer diagnosis and I love her. She needs all the support to fight this, and I don't want to be the second man to turn his back on her in 2 weeks. She gets anxious and stressed in the middle of the night and often just needs a hug to reassure her. I'm worried she will spiral and deteriorate if I'm not there. What should I do? Well, OP, if I was you, I wouldn't stay. I'd actually be looking for a divorce lawyer. Before I leave though, of course, or before I file for divorce, I would make sure that she does have a support system. Family or friends, anybody that can help her through this difficult time. But the fact is, OP, that she cheated, and when the dude flaked out, that's when she turned to you. She took him to the diagnosis meeting because that's who was important to her, not you. In this case, you would be what we call in my country, peor es nada, which would kind of translate to having nobody around would be worse. So yeah, OP, instead of looking for a counselor, I'd be looking for a divorce lawyer. And what about you guys? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's go move on to the community comments to see what they said about this. Durgan Mr. 97 says, your wife brought her affair partner of 1.5 years to her cancer diagnosis. You should probably take a bit of time to process that separately before you make any decisions on what you would like to do. She wanted to go through that process with him. You need to figure out how you want to handle that knowledge. Don't ignore your needs while you evaluate how you want to handle being abandoned by your wife while she is going through a very tough situation. She will take your support, but she doesn't have any love or respect left for you. Bellissima B says if she didn't have cancer, she would probably be with him right now while you sit at home playing the doting husband none the wiser. Cancer is awful, but sadly, she chose her bed when she cheated. She could have had a husband who cared for her to look after her. Instead, you will never know if she's just staying with you because her first choice walked away. And if he had have stayed, well then the cancer diagnosis would have pushed her to think life is too short to stay with the man I willingly betray, and the other guy would be holding her hand through it all instead of you. Either way, she's only sorry because she's out of all other options. And Heroic Spirit says, echoing what others have said, but you are the backup plan here. She only told you because her boy toy ditched her. At this point, you owe nothing to her as a partner. At best, you can support her as a friend. But I would personally cut my losses and move on with my life. She clearly did by starting an affair. Ask yourself this, if the roles were reversed, would she be there to support you or would she ditch you like she did 18 months ago? What about the reassurance hugs you need at night? Would she be willing to give you those? Okay, well, the community in unison at this point is telling OP that he is the backup plan and that he should leave. So now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. So we spent most of last night talking and I wanted to explore a lot about the cheating, probably out of dumb curiosity. Apparently, it was nothing to do with me, a dumb mistake. Clearly a very long mistake, and she was sorry, etc. We had wanted kids, and when I initially found out about the cancer, I had said about fertility and egg storage. Please note, I'm not especially interested anymore. It transpired that she had been seeing fertility prior to the diagnosis with him, and they had had 3 miscarriages despite actively trying. I was heartbroken by this as I always wanted kids. I stopped the conversation and went to think. I have to admit that later I went through her phone as she slept last night. I saw everything, all the plans they had, when they planned to leave and so on. I also found her Tinder. In the last week up to yesterday, she was messaging guys and flirting. Turns out she wanted pretty much anyone but me. Not even Plan B, more like Plan Z. I feel betrayed, but my main emotion is anger now. I'm furious at me mainly for believing her. So, I've left. I've walked out the house and going to a lawyer on Monday. The house is mine. She has her parents to go to, so she will need to get out. My charity has ended, and maybe in a few months I can be a friend, but I'm never going near her romantically. Looking back, I was so blind, so many excuses that I ignored. I would always say the words, I love you, and she would smile or say, ditto, but I can't remember the last time she said it. I don't think anyone who does what she did can love someone, and she sure as hell doesn't deserve me. I've had more love from Reddit than I've had from her in quite some time. I'm done with her, and the more I think about it, the more she can go to hell. Karma's rough. I haven't answered any of her messages or her parents as of yet, and to be honest, I don't plan to. The only thing I'm regretting is pouring so many years into a cheat, a liar, and a fantasist. If it wasn't for the cancer, I don't know how long it would have gone for. Maybe until she and him found a place or got pregnant. She professed to be sorry and carries on swiping for her next choice. I might have low self-esteem, but I am worth more than what she values me. I'm done. I would rather be alone than with someone who has such disdain for me. Well, good for you, OP. I'm sorry it had to end like this for you, your 20-year relationship. But as you say, it's better to be alone than with someone like her. So hopefully your divorce proceedings go swift and well. Take care, OP, and thank you for sharing. Now, let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Powdered Toast Supreme. Manager gets me fired, doesn't realize there's a paper trail. I worked as a writer and editor for over a decade, and in that time I had my fair share of bad bosses, like anyone. But there is one that completely takes the cake. I worked for a large media company that had dealings with a number of other companies and subsidiaries, ranging from publishing to fashion to sports to tech. You name it, they did it. Our writing department worked in a way that each writer would have specific areas that they would write for, kind of like how journalists have beats they cover. So if you were assigned to the fashion arm of the company or one of its partners or subsidiaries, you wrote or edited everything for that arm. I worked for this company for about a year and a half before a new manager was hired. She was the second in command of our department. Part of her and our department director's job was to update our internal style guide when necessary. For those that don't know, a style guide is a reference document for how to either refer to things or how to format things for the company and partners. Before her tenure as manager, this was only done maybe once or twice a year, and the changes were relatively minimal since the style guide was very well established in the company and had been in place for a number of years. After she came on, it was being updated at least once a week, if not multiple times a week. It legitimately became an obsession for her. Aside from the general annoyance of keeping up with it, it didn't take long for me and my co-workers to reach the conclusion that our new manager didn't have the faintest idea what she was doing. Each new version had more and more glaring errors. At first, we all ignored these changes, giving her the benefit of the doubt and hoping, albeit naively, that these new directives were mistakes. That was until people started getting reprimanded for not following the style guide. I was the first to get a one-on-one closed-door talk. One of the departments I wrote for was sports, and she had seen that I had not been following the new rule of how I was to refer to men's and women's teams I covered. Truthfully, I had willfully ignored it, hoping that it was just a mistake. To my horror, however, it appeared my new writing manager didn't understand basic grammar. You see, the change she implemented removed the apostrophe from men's and women's. So, for example, if I was covering men's basketball with apostrophe, I was to refer to it as men's basketball without apostrophe. Her rationale was that the men didn't own the team, therefore it should not be possessive. Apparently, her understanding of the English language didn't evolve past grade school explanations. I was honestly pretty dumbfounded at first, but once I got over the initial shock that the second in command of our department didn't realize men's was not a word, I tried bleakly to explain that men is already plural and that a possessive '(s) doesn't always denote direct ownership. Read men's bathroom. She stared blankly at me for a few seconds, and for the briefest of moments, I thought maybe I was seeing the cogs in her head turn. She, however, doubled down. Realizing the fight was lost, I told her I would implement the changes going forward. Now, here's where my malicious compliance comes in. We worked for and with very high-profile companies, and mistakes were not tolerated for things that were outward-facing. Realizing her idiocy could cost me my job, I made a simple request. Could you please email me the exact style guide rule you're referencing and how exactly you'd like me to implement it, with examples of where I messed up? She looked at me like I was stupid for not understanding what was being asked of me, but she still wrote it all down in an email for me. I also made sure any further style changes were referenced in an email and specifically asked that if there were further changes to please cite how I had done them in the past, along with how she would like them to be done from now on. Sure enough, within about 6 months of this, I was fired. At my exit interview, I handed HR a folder containing every written communication regarding the style changes, along with quite a bit of evidence that she was passing off her projects to other members of the department and changing people's work behind their backs. She was fired 3 months after me, along with our department director 3 months after that. Turned out, my little folder sparked a full investigation by HR, and after interviewing other co-workers in the department, they realized she had done all of it to have grounds to fire people within the department she didn't like. I just happened to be the first on the chopping block. The projects she was passing off to other people, she was taking the credit for what they were doing to make herself look good. Those changes she was making to other people's work, HR realized that she was changing things to make it explicitly incorrect. You gotta love software that tracks changes in timestamps and lists the user. On top of all of this, they also discovered that she had at best exaggerated and at worst fabricated large swaths of her resume. By the time she was fired, I had already found another job in a different department at the same company. It was a good gig, and my new manager wasn't a complete see you next Tuesday. Eventually, I moved on from that company. But if anything, my time there taught me a very valuable lesson. Document, document, and document some more. Well, OP, good for you for asking and keeping the receipts. She got exactly what she had coming to her. Thanks for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.